There's some conventional wisdom out there when it comes to breakups that's totally wrong. And actually, in some cases, if you follow that conventional advice, you can end up being worse off, or it can end up setting you back in your healing process. So let's bust these myths today. I've got 5 of them, so make sure you watch all the way through. Breakup myth number 1, you shouldn't miss your ex if they treated you badly. Oh, this one drives me crazy because it's everywhere. And you're not hearing it from coaches or therapists, but you're hearing it from, let's call it like the general public. You will get this a lot if you left a toxic or an abusive relationship. Very often, if you come to someone with your pain after leaving an abusive relationship, people feel very confused. They're like, why are you feeling sad about this? You should feel happy because you're not in that relationship anymore. Why don't you feel better about this? Believe me, I wish it were that easy, but that's not the reality. And let's bring some attention to this here. Those are very insensitive comments, but it tends to happen a lot. And so if you're on the receiving end of something like this, let's break it down here. You're going to miss your ex, even if they treated you badly. In 99% of the cases, unless you've gotten to the point where this was like a really long relationship or a long marriage, and you just took the time to grieve while you were in the relationship, and by the time the breakup or the divorce happened, you were pretty much over it. In those cases, okay, I would say maybe you wouldn't miss your ex, but every other case, you're going to. That's just what happens because you were emotionally attached to this person. So even though the relationship might have been abusive or unhealthy or toxic, and it overall wasn't great for you, there's still that emotional attachment. And when you sever that attachment, there's pain, even if you're much better off being out of that relationship. And even in the most unhealthy relationship, there's almost always some good parts. And that's a big part of what you're letting go here. What you're grieving, you're letting go of the good parts. Also, the dream that you had for that relationship. Whenever any of us get into a relationship, we then have some dreams for what could be. Maybe we're going to get married someday, we're going to have kids, we're going to live happily ever after. And when the relationship falls apart, you grieve the loss of what could have been. And so that's where you get attached. And also, when we're talking about abusive or toxic relationships, there's this additional thing that's called a trauma bond. And what a trauma bond does is it makes it so much harder to move on from that relationship. So it's actually the exact opposite of this myth that you're just supposed to feel better once you've left an abusive relationship. It actually, because of the trauma bond that happens in many cases, makes it harder than just a quote-unquote regular breakup. If you want to learn more about what a trauma bond is, because I don't want to take too much time on that today, I will leave the link to a video I have about that at the end of the video. So to sum this up here, if the relationship was bad or abusive, yeah, leaving it, you will feel better in a lot of ways, and it will ultimately be the best decision for you. But there will still be some pain to go through, so don't let anybody tell you that you should just be fine after that. There's a lot of healing to do. Okay, breakup myth number 2 here. If you were the one that ended the relationship, you shouldn't feel bad. This one's not true either. Even if you were the person to end the relationship, to do the breaking up, there's still going to be some emotion there for you. Because like we talked about before, when you're in a relationship with someone, you become emotionally attached. And even if you got to the point where you decided, you know what, this relationship is not working for me anymore, we're not compatible, there's still something to let go of, even if it was your idea to end the relationship. And you know what really we could do here is let's just throw out any advice, any sort of judgment that says something like, you should be over it already. You should be feeling fine. Let's drop these shoulds here, because when it comes to relationships, there's always some loss. There's always some grieving to do. There's always some sadness and maybe even some fear and anxiety that come up. So it takes how long it takes. Drop the shoulds. Because even if you did decide to end it, I bet that you didn't really want to end it. Probably what you really wanted was for things to change or for your partner to be different. It's not like you went in there saying, oh, you know what? Yeah, I don't want this relationship anymore. It's usually because there's something happening. You're not happy. You want things to be different. And so you make the choice to break up, but who really wants to go through a breakup? I mean, they're painful, they're uncomfortable. The pain will still be there until you work through it. Myth number 3, time heals all wounds. Oh, this one. How many times have you heard that? And this one gets really tricky because there is some truth to it. Time does help. But that being said, time usually does not do all the healing unless you're taking specific healing steps with that time. I know people who have been broken up for years here, and they say that it still feels like this happened yesterday. The breakup still feels so fresh. And that's often how it is. So if you can relate to this, if this is how it feels for you, like you've just been waiting for time to take away the pain, to help you to move forward, just know that it's normal that it's not happening for you. There's not something wrong with you. We need a lot more than just time in many, many cases. You need to take specific healing steps, especially if the relationship was toxic or abusive. There's so much damage that can be done in those types of relationships. And if you just sit around and wait, it's not gonna help. It's actually probably gonna just get worse. If you do need some support and you wanna get unstuck and start to actually move forward for real, I'm gonna leave the link here to my X Detox program. That's what it's for. Myth number 4, breakup myth number 4. You just need to get with someone else. Ooh, isn't that a tempting one? Who here has not been tempted by that one? I know I have. It seems like such an easy fix. It seems like almost kind of like the natural thing to do. Like, well, okay, I've just broken up with someone. I'm really lonely. Let me go find someone else. Makes sense, right? Well, it's not that easy. And some variations of this would sound like, well, I just need to move on with the right person. I need to find a different person. That's kind of how we justify this in our minds. And here's the truth about this. Sometimes that does work. That's also where we get tripped up here. There are some rare situations where somebody does come right out of a relationship and they find the person who they're with the rest of their lives shortly after that. But that is the exception here. That is really, really the exception. I don't know that many people who that's happened for. I was not one of those lucky people. And I bet if you're here watching this video, this probably wasn't you either. Because here's what usually happens when we try to get into a relationship immediately or very shortly after a breakup. The first thing that could happen is we dive in, we're like, yes, this is so great, I found somebody, I don't have to go through all of that grieving process. And then once the relationship starts to get real, we can have this big wave of panic, fear, like, oh my gosh, I am so not ready. Oh crap. I thought I was ready, but I am not. And for a lot of us, we realize that we didn't actually go through that grieving process. And because we didn't, we truly aren't ready to commit to somebody else. And so that can happen. The other thing that can happen is if we haven't taken the time to heal after a breakup and really just like decompress, figure out what went wrong, how we got into that situation, we can end up in a situation that is almost identical to the one that we got out of, but just in a different package. Like the person just looks different, or maybe the dysfunction that was there previously just shows up in a slightly different way. Or for many of us, even in the exact same way. And this happens when we don't take the time to do that breakdown after we come out of the relationship, to figure out what our patterns are, to figure out why we keep recreating these patterns, and to take the time to figure out how to shift that. What most of us need is time being single. Time spent working on ourselves, giving ourselves that time to heal, working on our self-worth, working on our self-love, so that when we go back out there into the dating world, we're in a very different place. We're not gonna miss those red flags in the past. We're not gonna settle for someone who's cold or distant. We know what we want, and we know that we can get that. We need time to learn what a healthy relationship is, to work on being more available ourselves so that we're not drawn to unavailable people, time spent learning how to show up in a healthy way, how to resolve conflict in a healthy way. All of that stuff, that takes time. If you feel like you need this and this is speaking to you, this is what I do for my clients in my Living Free Finding Love program. I'm gonna leave the link here to check out. All right, last breakup myth we're busting. I need to get closure, or you need closure to be able to move on. This one can feel so true. It can feel like I just need to get in touch with my ex this one last time so we can have this conversation, so I can understand why he did what he did, so I can be able to move on. If you've been here, you know how compelling this feels. And what I will say to you very clearly is that your mind is lying to you. What's really happening is your brain is trying to get that hit or that fix of your ex, almost like a drug. It's the part of you that just wants to feel better and believes that there's something that your ex could say that would take all this pain away. There's something that your ex could do, or maybe just the right combination of words will make all of this feel better. Or that there's something they could tell you that would help you to understand it all, to understand why they did what they did, why they said what they said. And that's what will help you to feel better. And that is the lie. I'm here from the other side to tell you that you don't need what your brain is telling you. You don't need this closure. Because the truth is, if your partner could give you that closure, if they could say to you, yeah, I said all those things, I did all those things because I was just going through a hard time and I was afraid to get close because of the issues with my mother, they're probably not going to say that. There's probably a reason why the relationship was ending. In many cases, it's because those discussions aren't happening. The relationship wasn't healthy. And so us thinking that our ex is just going to suddenly show up and be able to give us this closure and tell us what was going on is extremely unrealistic. Now, again, no judgment here. If this is happening to you, if these thoughts are coming up, if these feelings are coming up, like, I got to get closure, it's okay. It's normal. Just let them be there. The trick here is not to act on them. To acknowledge that, oh yeah, okay, I don't need to act on this. This is just the part of me that's hurting and wants to feel better. But what ultimately helps you to feel better and to feel like you do have a sense of closure and peace is the healing that you do on your own. Because like I said, most of our exes, they're not gonna give us closure. I got zero closure from my exes. Believe me, I tried. It just was not happening. And so what I can tell you from being years down the road here is that I didn't need it. I truly didn't need it. What I needed to do was to heal my own stuff, to find my own sense of healing and peace around the situation. And also just know that if you're tempted to go for that closure conversation, just know that for most people, this actually backfires. This actually makes you feel worse because, like I said before, your ex probably wasn't capable of being open and honest about what was going on. And so it ultimately just ends up getting you hooked back into the relationship and leaves you feeling worse. So don't do it. You don't need that closure, I promise you. You can feel better without it. All right, guys, if you want to learn more about what a trauma bond is and why it makes it so hard to move on from a breakup, check out this video here.